Hey there, class. Continuing on in part 4, pricing, planning, and purchasing retail inventories. So planning sales and inventory. Planning includes identifying goals or objectives and devising strategic ways to achieve them. Forecasting is an important part of the planning process. It involves predicting trends or outcomes generally based upon factors like last year's sales. Two forecasting functions are sales planning and inventory planning. Plans are categorized by the time period which they cover, as well as by their point of origin and the direction that they travel within the organization. There are 4 different types of plans: long-range plans, short-term plans, top-down plans, and bottom-up plans. Let's explore these plans in a little bit more detail. So your long-range plans and your short-term plans are categorized by the time period that they cover. Your long-range plan covers a 3 to 5 year period or longer. They are developed by top management and they have a significant impact on the organization. Your long-range plans includes expansion strategies, market position, and major capital expenditures. Your short-term plans covers a period that is shorter than 1 year. These are developed by the lower level management. They are narrow in scope as compared to the long-range plan. They include things like schedules and budgets. Then you have your top-down and bottom-up plans, which are categorized by their point of origin and the direction that they travel within the organization. Since planning is a two-way street, most organizations will combine top-down and bottom-up planning. Hence, input is gathered from all levels of management. With top-down planning, this originates at the upper level, and it affects planning at lower levels. With your bottom-up plan, this is going to originate at the lower level. It is the building blocks of the organizational's wide plan. The 454 calendar is a universally adopted accounting calendar that is used by retailers. By using this calendar, everyone is able to be on the same page when referring to time periods. This calendar is referred to as the 454 because each month has 4 or 5 weeks. Months are chronologically arranged in a 4-week, 5-week, and 4-week order. The 454 calendar has 2 6-month seasons: spring, which runs February through July, and fall, which runs August through January. As you look at the slide here, you can see how the months are arranged. February through November all have 4 weeks. March through December all have 5 weeks, and then April through January has 4 weeks. Planning structures. So divisions, departments, classifications, and subclasses are used by retailers to create hierarchies to define units of business and organizational responsibilities. These areas are defined by product line. Defining merchandise hierarchies by division, department, classification, and subclass is a common practice within the retail industry, but it is not universal. Divisions are the most broad unit, while your subclasses are the most narrow unit. Brand-driven units are typically identified by the vendor. The designations of planning structures include price range, such as moderate, size range, such as junior, in use, such as sportswear, lifestyle, such as active, selling season, such as holiday, product composition or fabrication, such as brass or silk, and consumer, like female. Multiple designations can be combined to create a sole business unit identity, such as men's better sportswear. Business unit identities within a retail organization often parallel those of the wholesale market. Sales plans are an important function. Expense plans, inventory purchases, and profit objectives are all predicated by sales planning. For example, a retailer's holiday selling payroll budget is based on the projected sales for that period. If sales are planned too low, the store will be understaffed, resulting in a loss of sales. If the sales are planned too high, the store will be overstaffed and have poor turnover, resulting in wasting payroll hours. Some things that are included in sales plans are your growth strategies. You will also take into consideration any past and present data used so that you can predict those future sales. Past sales, though, must be comparable. Also, any historical sales that are used should be typical of the period. Current trends can predict future sales. Now, historical sales typical of the period can be described as last year period being valid or invalid based upon whether or not the season's weather is atypical. If there is no historical data that the retailer can use, then that retailer should use sales history of a similar business unit. The economic conditions would be things such as inflation, interest rates, and the general state of the economy that should be taken into consideration. Planning inventory. Having the right amount of inventory is essential to the organization meeting and or exceeding its sales goals. Insufficient inventory can result in slow turnover, markdowns, and lost sales. A buyer bases their purchase and delivery decisions on inventory projections that are in consideration of two factors: planned sales and desired turnover. There are 5 methods in which inventory can be planned. These methods combine projected sales and some variation of turnover to determine the amount of inventory needed to meet sales goals for a certain period of time. The 5 methods are basic stock method, percentage variation method, stock to sales ratio method, weeks of supply method, and formula for replenishment of staple merchandise. So let's look at the formula for the basic stock method. The basic stock method will give you your beginning of the month by calculating your planned monthly sales plus average inventory minus average monthly sales. Now, you'll also need to be able to calculate your turnover and your average monthly sales. So in order to calculate your turnover, you'll take your sales and you'll divide that by your average inventory. To calculate your average monthly sales, you'll take your annual sales and divide that by 12. Let's practice. Using table 13.2 from page 283 of the text, let's calculate the beginning of the month using the basic stock method. The desired turnover is 6.0. So first we'll calculate average inventory by using the turnover formula. We know the desired turnover is 6.0 and the total sales is $720,000. So how do we calculate average inventory? We'll start by manipulating the formula. So we're going to take the turnover formula and we're going to manipulate it so that we can get our average inventory. So how we'll do that is we'll take our sales and divide that by turnover, which will give us our average inventory. Now we want to plug in the data that we know. So we know that sales are $720,000, and we also know that our turnover is 6.0. So if we take $720,000 and divide it by 6.0, we get $120,000. Now let's calculate our average monthly sales. So to calculate our average monthly sales, we need to take our annual sales and divide that by the number of months in a year, which would be 12. So now we want to plug our data into the formula. So we'll take $120,000 and we'll divide that by 12. This gives us a total of $60,000. Now that we know what our average inventory is, as well as what our average monthly sales are, let's calculate our beginning of the month, or BOM, using the basic stock method. So we're going to compute the first 3 months together, then you'll practice computing the remaining 9 months. So the basic stock method formula is plan monthly sales plus average inventory minus your average monthly sales. So let's plug in our data into this formula to get our BOM. So we're going to do what's in parentheses first. So we're going to take our average inventory of $120,000 and we're going to subtract our average monthly sales of $60,000. So that gets us $60,000 remaining. We're going to take that $60,000 and add it to our planned monthly sales of $30,000 for a total of $90,000. So here's a few tips to keep in mind. When turnover is 12.0, your average monthly sales and the average inventory will be equal in the basic stock method. The basic stock will be 0 and the BOM will always equal the planned sales. When turnover is greater than 12.0, average monthly sales will be greater than the average inventory. The basic stock will be a negative number and BOM will be less than planned. Therefore, the basic stock method can only be used when the turnover is less than 12.0. Okay, so we just finished calculating BOM for February. Now let's calculate BOM for March. So using that same formula, we're going to work with the data in parentheses first. So we're going to take that $120,000, which is our average inventory, and we're going to subtract the $60,000, which is our average monthly sales. We're going to take that figure, which is $60,000, and add it to our planned monthly sales of $60,000 for a total of $120,000. Now moving on, we're going to calculate for April. Using the same formula again, work within the parentheses first. So we're going to take our $120,000 average inventory, subtract our $60,000 in average monthly sales, and then we're going to take that figure, which is $60,000, and we're going to add it to $90,000, which is our planned monthly sales, for a total of $150,000. So let's practice our basic inventory formula. So basic inventory is going to equal our average inventory minus our average monthly sales. So again, we're going to take our average inventory of $120,000 minus $60,000. So again, it's our average inventory, $120,000 minus our average monthly sales of $60,000, which will result in $60,000. Now that we know what average inventory is and what the average monthly sales are, let's calculate the beginning of the month using the basic stock method. So to calculate our beginning of the month inventory, we're going to take our planned sales of $30,000 for February, and we're going to add that to our 60,000 BOM that we figured out in the previous 3 slides. So when you add those two together, you get a BOM inventory amount of $90,000. We're going to do the same for March, but we're swapping out our planned sales of $30,000 for $60,000 to give us a total of $120,000. And the same for April, except we're taking a planned sales of $90,000 and adding $60,000 to get $150,000. Now go ahead and practice on your own by computing the remaining 9 months. So planning sales continued. There is also the percentage variation method. So this method states that the BOM should be a percentage of average inventory. The percentage varies each month depending on planned sales. So here's a few tips. When planned sales and average monthly sales are equal, BOM is equal to the average inventory. Therefore, an average sales plan requires an average inventory as a BOM. When planned sales are less than average monthly sales, BOM is less than average inventory. Therefore, a lower than average sale plan requires a BOM less than average inventory. When planned sales are greater than average monthly sales, BOM is greater than average inventory. Therefore, a higher than average sales plan requires a BOM that is greater than average inventory. So let's talk about the percentage variation method formula. So in order to get BOM using this formula, you must take your average inventory multiplied by 0.5, and then you're going to take what's in the parentheses and work with that first. So you'll take 1 and you'll add that to your planned sales for the month divided by your average monthly sales. So let's practice. So we're referencing back to the basic inventory formula and pulling out average inventory and our average monthly sales. We're referring to the table as well on this slide for our planned sales for the month. Okay, so let's plug in our data. We know that planned sales for the month is $30,000. We also know that average monthly sales is $60,000. And we know that our average inventory is $120,000. So let's go ahead and break this formula down even more. Okay, so we take the $30,000 and we divide that by $60,000. That gives us 0.5. So we take 1 and add that to 0.5. Then we multiply 1.5 by 0.5. This gives us 0.75. We now take $120,000 and multiply that by 0.75, which gives us $90,000. So our stock to sales ratio method. So beginning of the months are calculated by the stock to sales ratio method based on the desired stock to sales ratio for a month. So here's a few tips. Months with higher sales plans have lower stock to sales ratios, and months with low sales plans have high stock to sales ratios. Therefore, ratios used in this method will vary depending on the sales volume for each month. So the stock to sales ratio method formula is you take your planned sales and you multiply that by your desired stock to sales ratio to get your BOM. So let's practice. Using a desired stock to sales ratio of 4.0 and planned sales of $12,000, calculate BOM. So we're going to take our planned sales of $12,000 and we're going to multiply that by our desired stock to sales ratio of 4.0, which gives us a total of $48,000. Weeks of supply method. The weeks of supply method states that the amount of inventory required to support planned sales for a week is driven by the number of weeks the inventory will last based on the projected turnover. This method is used often to evaluate inventory levels. It is implied that to support sales for a certain amount of weeks that there must be enough inventory on hand if they intend to achieve a certain annual turnover. Another implication is to achieve certain sales goals, a buyer needs enough inventory to last a certain amount of weeks. This is calculated by using the planned inventory formula. So what happens as turnover increases? The weeks of supply should decrease as more merchandise is being sold, and vice versa when your turnover decreases. So the weeks of supply method, the formula is going to be to take your weeks of the year, so there's 52 weeks in a year, and you're going to divide that by your turnover. This is going to give you your weeks of supply. Now, your planned inventory formula is calculated by taking your planned sales and multiplying that by the weeks of supply. So let's practice. We're going to start with our weeks of supply method formula. Our desired turnover is 3.0. So to calculate our weeks of supply, we're going to take the number of weeks in a year, which is 52 weeks, and we're going to divide that by turnover. So we're taking 52 weeks and we're dividing that by 3.0, which gives us 17.3. Now let's calculate our planned inventory using our planned inventory formula. This takes your planned sales and multiply that by your weeks of supply. Now, let's consider that our planned sales is $4,000. What is your weeks of supply? Your weeks of supply is 17.3. Remember, that's what we just figured out in the other formula. So now we're going to take our planned sales of $4,000 and we're going to multiply that by 17.3, which is going to give us a total of $69,200. The formula for periodic replenishment of staple merchandise. So this method states that staple merchandise should be replenished based on the amount of units sold during a typical selling period. the time lapse between the arrival of orders and a safety or reserve stock. So here's the legend for this particular formula. So M stands for your maximum. This is the amount of inventory needed for the period. RP is your reorder period. This is a time period that defines the frequency with which orders are placed. DP is your delivery period. This is a time period between the point at which an order is placed and the point at which the goods are available for sale. S, your rate of sale, is the number of units that are typically sold during the reorder period. And R, reserve stock, is the additional stock to avoid stock out if sales exceed plan. Now with this method, there is an additional formula that you must use to figure your reserve stock. So basically that formula is to take the square root of LT times S and multiply that by 2.3. So the formula again for the periodic replenishment of staple merchandise is M equals RP plus DP times S plus R. So let's go ahead and work out the data. So RP is 2 weeks plus DP, which is 1 week, plus S, which is 100 units per week, plus R. So remember, we have to figure our reserve stock formula. So RP plus DP equals 3. If we multiply that by 100, we get 300. So the square root then of 300 is 17.32. Now we take 17.32 and we multiply that by 2.3, which gives us 39.837, rounded up, that is 40. Now we take M, which is 300, and we add R, 40, which then gives us a total of 340 for M. Open to buy is the amount of merchandise a buyer needs to order to support planned sales for a period. Open to buy is derived from planned purchases. It is the difference between planned purchases and merchandise on order. Think of open to buy as your bank account. You begin the month with a new balance. As the month goes on, the balances decrease as orders are placed. A buyer is considered to have overbought or bought too much merchandise when the on order exceeds planned purchases. This can be resolved by canceling orders. Any discrepancies between the plan and the actual sales must result in open to buy adjustments to avoid having too much inventory or not enough inventory. Planned purchases are based on the amount of inventory brought forward from the previous period, BOM, planned sales for the period, the amount of inventory that must be rolled over to the next period, EOM, and planned markdowns for the period. The planned purchase formula. Planned purchases equals planned sales for the month plus planned markdowns plus planned EOM minus planned BOM. The open to buy formula. Open to buy equals planned merchandise minus on order. Assortment planning. An assortment plan defines merchandise by product characteristics. The most used characteristics include price, brand, size, color, fabrication, and style. Assortment plans vary by month and season. They are also linked to a retailer's promotional calendar. It is important for buyers to review their assortments often to ensure they're meeting the needs of the consumer. Assortments are affected by the fashion trends and the economic state. Price. An assortment's price range is determined by its opening or lowest price point and its ending or highest price point. It can also be characterized by moderate or better pricing. Brand. Assortments can be planned by brand. Private labels are considered. Size. Assortments are planned with regard to the sizes with the greatest demand. Color. Assortments are planned using color categories: basic, fashion, or neutral. Fabrication. Fabric can be an important assortment distinction. Style. The style or look of merchandise can determine its significance in any assortment. So, specifically with color, men's dress shirts, for example, can be categorized as solids or fancies. When it comes to fabrication, for example, sweater assortments can be categorized as wool, cotton, and acrylic. When it comes to style, a t-shirt assortment can be defined as a crew neck, a v-neck, or a scoop neck. Trends in planning. Computerized planning system integrates plans from various organizational levels, which ensures a match between financial and merchandise plans, bottom-up and top-down plans, and unit and dollar plans. What if capabilities with computerized planning systems allows planners to adjust and quickly observe the effects of the adjusting variables? Computerized planning systems are aimed to make the process more precise. Category management is a customer-driven concept where a product category is managed as if it were a separate business entity, such as a store or department. This concept uses planning technology and historical sales data to develop ideal space allocation and assortments by store. Planning information. To accurately plan, information from various sources must be used. Some information, such as sales history, current sales trends, and inventory, can be obtained internally, but other sources of information must be obtained externally via consumer publications, trade publications, trade associations, forecasting services, reporting services, and consultants. Consumer publications are magazines and newspapers that are targeted towards a specific market. Insight is given into lifestyles, tastes, and needs of a specific market. Trade publications targets members of a specific industry. Insight is given into merchandise resources, trade shows, and trade services. Trade associations represent the interests of a particular industry segment. Forecasting services predicts trends in advance of the selling season by studying history, prevailing socioeconomic, and market conditions. Reporting services surveys and analyzes specific industry segments, reporting their findings to service subscribers. Consultants are advisors with expertise in particular areas. They analyze issues or resolve problems. They generally do this for a contractual fee. All right, class, this ties up chapter 13.